Dr. Waqar, please, you can start the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anish. Thanks for the introductions and the etiquettes, of course. Allow me to share the slides.
So you are the co-host, so you
Yep.
can share the
Yep,
slides.
of
Sure.
course. Okay, so we are here for an interactive session with our colleagues at FCCU. So joining me are Dr. Firasat, who is working in Mass Communication Department, has a PhD from Clemson University, and Dr. Sharoon Hanook, who is in Statistics Department and has a PhD from Case Western Reserve University. I'll be introducing them in little more detail later on. And myself, Waqar Azeem, in English Department, PhD, State University of New York, Binghamton. So a little background to Fulbright Scholarship. Fulbright Scholarship in Pakistan is administered by USEFP, which is United States Educational Foundation in Pakistan, that was established in 1950, which is a really long history. And USEFP aims to enhance mutual understanding between Pakistan and the US through educational and cultural exchanges. So Fulbright Scholarship for PhD as well as Masters, it covers graduate study in top universities in the US. It's considered really generous scholarship because it provides you tuition, textbooks, airfare, living stipend, and health insurance as well. So it might be an interesting comparison with the funded programs in the US. Most of the funded programs, for example, do not provide airfare or textbooks. So from that perspective, Fulbright Scholarship is really generous and supports the students. It also assists with visa process for the grantee as well as spouse and children. So those who have families and wish to apply for PhD should take that as an extra incentive, because their spouse and children's visa process is also supported. So as Anish told us in the beginning, May 11th is the deadline for 2023 intake of Fulbright Scholarship. Here is the announcement. You should be able to access it at USEFP website. I will be sharing with you some of the major points from this announcement. So what we are really covering is PhD program, eligibility and requirements. So under PhD program, Fulbright covers almost all subjects except clinical medicine. And the minimum qualification required for applying for PhD program is master's or MPhil, which is 18 years of education. Now, in addition to 18 years of education from an accredited university, there are two additional requirements. One is GRE, which is international GRE, and the minimum score required in that is in verbal 138, in quantitative 136. And the second requirement is TOEFL, which is the language exam. It's required for all the selected candidates. So that is what announcement says. So that actually means that you have to take GRE before you submit the application to Fulbright. However, you can take TOEFL at a later stage as well. Now, what do you really submit to Fulbright or to USCFP when you submit your application? So the application form, which is available at USEFP website. I have given the link at the bottom. You should be able to access it through simple Google search, or I think Anish will be sharing the slides with you. You should be able to access it over there as well. 3 references, which are 3 reference letters. General practice, which I am aware of, is 2 academic reference letters and 1 professional reference letter. They make good balance. And then GRE score, as I already told that, it is required before you submit the application. And then scanned transcripts, which are copies of your transcripts and degrees, if you have that. They should be attested preferably by HEC, but at the time of submitting application, the transcripts attested by the issuing authority, which is your university, are also accepted. So you have to complete the application and submit it to USEFP online. That is the only option available. Paper applications are not accepted. So these are a few basics. Now I'm going to request Dr. Sharoon to give us little details about the objectives, statement, and Fulbright expectations. So before he takes over, I like to just give you a little introduction about Dr. Sharoon Hanook. Dr. Sharoon is currently working as the chairperson of the Department of Statistics at Forman Christian College. He has taught statistics at GC University Lahore for 11 years. He's a graduate of Case Western Reserve University with PhD in epidemiology and biostatics. He remained a member of American Statistical Association, Fulbright Fellow, and the chair, Student Organizations and Allocation Committee at Case Western Reserve University. He has worked on different committees at the Graduate Student Senate at CWRU to improve students' campus experience. He has published in internationally reputed journals. He's a former Night Arabian and a reprogramming enthusiast. So I request Dr. Sharoon to take over and give a few tips to our participants about, writing the research statement and statement of purpose and other Fulbright expectations. Over to you, Dr. Sharoon, please.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Waqar, for introduction. It seems like that was pretty long. And I wrote this like maybe 5 years ago. Anyway, so talking about objectives and personal statement, these are 2 specific things. Over the past years, I have seen a lot of people coming to me and trying to inquire about it, that how to write it and what should be considered. And people come up with a lot of questions. So I won't be certainly giving answers to all, but we'll try my best to cover like the main highlights that should be included there. The first of all, research objectives. Many people have this misconception that the research objectives they're going to write in their application for admission should be a project they will be working in the US. Most of the people I have known who have gone to US on the Fulbright or otherwise directly applying to the university, they don't really get to work on the projects, research projects they actually write into their research objectives. Majority of them actually get into the program and do the research that is done by the research supervisor they've been allocated to. So then why these are important? Please know this. The researchers out there who will be evaluating your application, and this is major requirement for the admission to the graduate program, at least for the PhD program, that the researcher or admission committee wants to see that how do you write, and more specifically, your scientific writing skills. So when you're writing your research objectives, my advice is that do your authentic research and don't just make research objectives seems as some writing, but try to make it a more scientific writing. And use of references is wonderful, but think of it as a sample writing that people in the admission committees in the universities are going to review it. So moving on to the personal statement, this is something that is equally important for your Fulbright application as well as for your university admission letter application. So statement of purpose is, I personally think of it as the life story. It should be something that, because the people who are reading your application, they don't really know you. You are sitting in Pakistan and people in the US are going to talk about you and they're going to evaluate your application. So think of personal statement as something that represents you to them, represents your application to them. So write it in a form that the readers, they really understand who this person is. Personal statement should include your life story. You should not start writing each and every bit of your life story, but it should be, it should make a story like that, what motivates you to apply for this program more specifically. And keep one thing in mind, the Fulbright mission is to bring people in as a cultural exchange. So Fulbright wants people from Pakistan to go to the US and inform Americans about the Pakistani culture. And in return, that's not only the full stop there, that's just the first thing they want, but they also want the people to return back to Pakistan and help people in Pakistan understand that what the American people are and what they think, because the people's understanding of Pakistan is different from the government's understanding. So sometimes, we bring, we translate government's line with the same as the people. So it sometimes, most of the time, it's actually different. So they want the people to represent the Pakistani people to represent American people in Pakistan, not specifically like they want you to be American, but they want you to share the culture while you are in US, the Pakistani culture with Americans, and while you are in Pakistan, share that American culture in Pakistan, so that there's a true people-to-people relationship that established. So, in personal statement, as far as I said, it's good for your application as well as your your university admission application as well as for Fulbright application. In personal statement, you should be very truthful. Many people try to bring fantasy into it, but please know this: there should be facts, and you should be very truthful. Write what's there. Whether it sounds good to you, it sounds bad to you. Do not try to hide things, because people in the interview, they're gonna figure it out really fast, right? So be truthful, and you can discuss that how the Fulbright experience is gonna help you in realizing your dreams, that how this is gonna help you to return to Pakistan and contribute into the society. You can explicitly talk about it into your personal statement as well. And, you know this, that you really don't want to give any single impression that you're not going to return back to Pakistan. So putting your future plans, that where do you see after finishing this degree, putting it into the personal statement, sometimes it sounds positive, right? And that's all from my side. If you have any questions, I would love to answer at the end, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharoon, for informing us about the research objectives, statement of purpose, and other Fulbright expectations. They are very important because research objective and personal statement, they are two vital documents required along with the application. They are kind of inbuilt in the application. So once you fill in the application, you are required to fill in research objectives and personal statement. And that is why we kept it as a separate category in the panel today. Also, it is very important that applying to the universities in the US is different from applying to the universities through Fulbright. So Fulbright has specific requirements, okay? And Dr. Sharoon has just explained those to us. So moving on to the next panelist for today, is going to be Dr. Firasat Jabeen, who will speak about the interview. Before she begins, I would like to introduce her a little bit. Dr. Firasat Jabeen is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Mass Communication at Forman Christian College. She did her PhD with Fulbright from Clemson University, USA in rhetoric, communication, and information design. Her research focuses on the intersection of rhetoric, communication, and culture studies, and its scope is fundamentally transdisciplinary. For a doctoral dissertation, Dr. Jabeen has studied Orientalism from a Pakistani standpoint and has argued for the ubiquitous nature of Orientalism for a periphery country like Pakistan. Dr. Jabeen's doctoral training has enabled her to amalgamate theoretical and practical approaches in the field of communication. So I request Dr. Firasat Jabeen to take over and please inform our participants about the tips for undertaking the interview for Fulbright Scholarship. Over to you, Dr. Firasat.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Waqar, and thank you, Anish. I think my colleagues here and my co-panelists who spoke before me, especially Dr. Hanook, has already talked at length about the application process, about personal statements, especially, and research objectives, study objectives. So when it comes to your preparation for interview, I think most of your preparation is already done when you are working on your application, your documents. And here I am referring to your admission essays, which essentially means your personal statement and your study objectives. So once you begin your preparation for Fulbright interview, my suggestion is to read your admission essays closely and then think about possible questions. And so when you were writing your admission essays, you talked about certain ideas. And during the interview, now the panel, in my experience, the panel asks you questions mainly from what you have written in your application. So now here is your chance to elaborate on the ideas that you have written, and the panel may ask you to expand on some ideas that you have mentioned there. So I think at this stage, now you should demonstrate your ability that you have enough background knowledge in your proposed field of study. And now you are ready to begin your PhD journey. And another important thing is that you should be able to talk about this idea, because in my experience, panel usually ask this question, and it sounds a very simple question. Well, if a candidate is asked this question, well, why do you want to go to the US? Why do you want to study in the US? And many candidates actually get stumbled on this question. I think it's a very important question. You should be able to talk about very clearly why is it important for you to go to the US to begin your doctoral journey. So I think many panelists, they definitely touch upon that question. Another thing that I want to talk about, and Dr. Hanook actually briefly touched upon that, and I believe Dr. Waqar also talked about that. So when you begin, after you are shortlisted and they invite you for the Fulbright interview, I think it's very important for you to know the Fulbright program, the purpose of Fulbright program, their mission. It's a cultural exchange program. And in my experience in the interview, usually they ask you these questions that, so how do you think, how is your learning experience in the US going to be helpful, or how is it going to be beneficial for Pakistan? In other words, they ask you that, how do you think that, how do you intend to translate your learning to situation and circumstances in Pakistan, to industry and academia when you return to the country? So they definitely touch upon these questions as well. Another very important thing that was coming to my mind, especially thinking about the Fulbright experience, thinking about the interview experience with the Fulbright, I think panel, when they are selecting a candidate, and the panel usually comprises of, there are Americans and there are Pakistanis, and Pakistanis usually, I mean, they are Fulbright alumni. So they want to make sure that the person or the candidate they are selecting, he or she has the ability to assimilate into a new culture. So just, I mean, imagine a situation that if you are awarded this scholarship, they are going to spend thousands of dollars on you. And they don't want a situation where a person comes later, a person comes with this idea that, well, I cannot excel in my studies because I'm having trouble adjusting in a new culture, or in a new academic environment. So they may definitely touch upon these questions as well. I remember from my experience when I appeared for the Fulbright interview several years ago, the panel asked me a question, which was, what is your impression of the US? So, and essentially they wanted me to talk about my culture, like my expectations and my experience, not my experience, actually my expectations, and how actually I'm planning to cope up with the newness, because I was going to be in a new culture, in a new environment, and they wanted me to talk about that. Other than that, I think another suggestion that comes in my mind is that do not fake on anything. Just be yourself, like Dr. Hanook said, be honest and be truthful while answering the questions of the panelists. And the biggest step for the preparation of Fulbright interview is to read your documents closely, and then prepare a list of possible questions, the possible questions that the panel may ask you, and then prepare their answers, and then practice them and rehearse them. And I'm asking for practice because they also evaluate you, Fulbright panel evaluates you for your communication skills and for your interpersonal skills. And while you are answering their questions, you want to be coherent in your answers, and you want your thoughts to be organized. You also want to be eloquent. So for all of this, I think it is very important that you go prepared. A good thing about the Fulbright application, and Dr. Hanook actually talked about that at length, is that they do not ask you, and yes, there is this misconception about study objectives. Fulbright doesn't ask you to develop a research proposal. Unlike many other scholarship programs, this is different with Fulbright. I think they understand that it is little early for you to develop a research proposal at this stage, because the coursework in the US is intense. It's almost 2 years long. In some programs, it may take even 3 years. So, and I think after you are done with your coursework and you are getting ready for your comprehensive, you get ample time to develop a full-fledged proposal. So what they want is only your study objectives, your future goals. However, make sure you spend considerable amount of time developing your essays, because that stage is also preparing you for the interviews. So your study objectives that you write, I think that you should write them after careful consideration, and they should be really thought through, because later on you are going to elaborate on the same things when you appear for the interview. And lastly, I'll say that once you are shortlisted, I think this is an achievement in itself. If you are shortlisted and once you are invited for the interview, I think you should go prepared, and that preparation is actually preparing your application document. Read it closely, make a list of questions and prepare their answers. And I think preparation is the key. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Firasat. So I just wanted to add a little bit to this point of where you should sound natural and you should be prepared to address the questions which are related to your future plans. So the tip is to prepare your application well in advance, so that you know that what you are going to write in your essays. By essays, we mean the study objectives and statement of purpose. So what you are going to write in that is in fact what you really want to do during your PhD program in the US. So if what you write there is aligning with what your real interests are, it will be possible for you to stay natural during your interview as well. Okay, so at this stage, I'm going to request any of the Fulbright alumni in our among our participants to share their experience of preparing their application or undertaking the interview. So probably we should have Miss Nazish Shahid with us. Miss Nazish, are you here? And would you please share your experience?
Yes, I am here. Am I audible here?
Yes, you are. Kindly introduce yourself a little bit and go ahead with your experience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Waqar. This is Nazish Shahid. I am from Mathematics Department. I availed postdoctoral fellowship. So I'm formally not the part of this panelist. Basically, these people are alumni and they have done their PhD through this program. But I wanted to share some of the things based on my experience as someone who has been a part of the review committee when in the initial screening process of these applications. So some things that I wanted to add when I was reviewing these applications, then something stood out that somebody has added in his or her application the things which were already mentioned in the CV. So I want to say that you don't need to do that. In the personal statement, that person has mentioned the things from the CV. So when they will be having a look at your CV, they would already know about your qualifications and the skills. So personal statement is not something about that. This is actually considered something negative. So please avoid doing that. And as Dr. Hanook has, Sharoon Hanook has very elaborately put what you should be including in your personal statement and what you should not. So I also want to add that please try to include one realistic goal, and I'm emphasizing on the word realistic, that should be aligned with what you want to do in your PhD. So in one of the applications, somebody had wrote that I want to conduct some experiment on space. I know that with the advancement in the technology, maybe it's not too far that we will actually be able to do that. But with the experience and the qualification that you have at the moment, it just does not sound very realistic. So realistic would be something that if you are applying for PhD in web developing or something, then probably you should, the one realistic goal could be that you will be making an app that would help you to filter the news which is authentic and which is fake. So that would be something realistic, but of course it should be aligned with whatever program you are applying for. And this third thing that I think is important, that in your personal statement, as Dr. Sharoon said, that it should include your life story. Maybe just you do not have to add each and everything, but maybe just one significant event that has helped you to evolve who you are today, and what are your aspirations and motivations that you would want to do or apply when you come back to Pakistan. But please, please, please do not put a shade to your own experience, your own qualifications that you have completed here in Pakistan, by highlighting the flaws here in our education system, and do not throw unnecessary praises on their educational system. They know that their educational system is good, but every system has its own flaws, and that's why they are inviting the diverse people to sit together and come up with the solutions that could solve the problems there in US as well as here in Pakistan. So do not undermine your hard experiences here in Pakistan. This is just not the right way to get a fellowship. If you think so, this does not work like that. And just one more thing, that it's about the interview, that it is perfectly normal that you are, if they ask some questions related to the subject, related to your qualification, related to your skills, which you have already mentioned in your application. But some questions could be very weird. You don't necessarily have to think that you have to elaborate the answer. You would just say that it sounds interesting, but I have really not thought about it. But it's perfectly normal that if you are not able to answer that question, this is not going to put a negative effect on your application or on your interview. So in one last question, a student asked me once that should my application be pro-American? No, just put a unique flair to your application. Talk about what is real, what you have achieved, that what you want to achieve. You don't have to add unnecessarily praises about them and their system. That's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nazish. So Dr. Shujat has asked if GRE is mandatory for postdoc scholarship as well. Dr. Nazish?
No, it is not mandatory. It's just for PhD program. For postdoctoral fellowship, you just have to, your personal statement is one huge component, and your research proposal is something they would, for the 75% of the time, they would focus on that.
And also, postdoc scholarship is announced separately.
Yes.
So this
yes.
one we are talking about, this is master's and PhD, which is grad school only, not postdoc. Okay, all right.
Dr. Waqar, can I add something?
Go ahead, please.
For postdoctoral program, announcement is usually around November or December, and then you have time to submit your applications by Feb or March next year.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that should be helpful. Okay, so if there is any other Fulbright alumni among us, I would ask them to go ahead. I think Dr. Sharoon wants to add something. Dr. Sharoon, please feel free.
Yeah, I wanted to add regarding GRE. Many universities right now in the US have been thinking of waiving off GRE for the admission to the graduate programs. So, and I have also noticed that people always try to look for like very high scores in GRE, and sometimes they just don't apply because they think that GRE was too tough or they couldn't get to the benchmark. I would encourage people, whether your score is relatively lesser, please go ahead and apply to that, because not all universities require GRE for the admissions as well.
Yeah, thank you. I think that motivation is really important. Just go for it, right? Do not idealize the preparation and do not idealize the results for GRE. Thank you. So at this stage, I would be opening the floor for any questions from any of the participants.
while all of you are thinking about your questions, I would just quickly, if Dr. Waqar allow me, can I
Of
just
course.
launch the feedback poll?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to add one more very important thing. Quite a number of students have approached me for Fulbright scholarship preparation for the application, and almost always their first question has been, could you help me in writing the research proposal? Right now, Dr. Firasat has already said that, but I just want to clarify, please read the Fulbright application and the requirements in detail. Okay, so the requirements to apply for Fulbright scholarship are different from the requirements to apply for a PhD program in the US or elsewhere in the world. Okay, so this was just, you know, one clarification I wanted to make.
Yeah, and I would like to add one more thing. You know, in the subcontinent, we have a habit to, start things just a night before the deadline. I would encourage that start early. You will never know. Like even sometimes 2 months are very less for the essays. More specifically, you write, you rewrite, you update it, and you keep changing it until even the last moment. And sometimes once you're submitted, you would again see that, oh well, I should have written it that way or the other way. So start early, please. Get your application ready by mid-April, and let the rest of the process for reviewing the application and updating it.
Yeah, so my suggested time period to complete the application is 1 year. So I believe that one full cycle, you know, starting from, you know, conceiving what kind of research you want to undertake, and then taking GRE or everything included, it takes about a year to complete everything. I mean, it's not just about the document that you're writing at the end of the day. It is about creating a vision for yourself, because you're going to commit yourself for 5 to 7 years of grad school in the US, right? So you are making a very big leap, right? So you should be confident about what kind of academic future you are foreseeing for yourself, right? So spend substantial time on completing the application and you know, making the kind of plans that you want to for yourself.
Dr. Waqar, can I add something here?
Go ahead, please.
First of all, yes, I do agree with you that it took me at least 1.5 years to prepare my application. So you should be spending a significant amount of time on your application to make it look good. And the thing that has just come up in my mind and about the interview, that while I was in that interview session, I was asked a question that think of one problem that is prevalent in Pakistan, and what would be your proposed solution about that? So I thought that I should be sharing it. So maybe prepare your own answer if somehow this comes to you as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Waqar, may I add into that?
Go ahead, please.
I think I just wanted to endorse what Dr. Waqar and Dr. Hanook has just said. Many times it happens to me that my former students, they come to my office and they want me to read their applications. They are applying for global UGrad program or for the master's program, or sometimes even for the PhD program. And they want me to have a look at their documents. And when I ask them, when did you write it? They would tell me, well, just yesterday or maybe a week ago. So I think it's very important that you spend considerable amount of time developing your application and then revise it multiple times. First of all, each of us is a different writer, but a first draft is never a good draft. Do not rely on your first draft. Revise your drafts multiple times. American students, I know from my studies in the US, they spend considerable amount of time, at least 3 to 4 months, developing their admission essays. And once you have written your drafts, put them aside and then revise them maybe after a week or 2 weeks, and there is no end. There should be no end to revision. Keep revising them, keep tweaking them. And another, I think, additional tip is always ask somebody, your friends or your colleagues, to review your admission essays for you, somebody who you think can give you a really good suggestion and constructive feedback. So because these are your documents on the basis of which you are going to be shortlisted. So I think you should spend ample and considerable amount of time working on them. And another thing, I had a confusion when I was working on my Fulbright application, that when I am writing my personal statement and study objectives, who should I keep in my mind, my funding agency or the university specific program wherever I want to go? I think at this stage, if you're applying for the Fulbright scholarship, we should be writing, keeping in view the Fulbright program. And the reason is, Fulbright applies for your admission to different universities on your behalf. And later on, if a university needs additional documents, and it happens most, or anything they may ask you.
All right. Firasat, I think you are done talking.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think this is very useful.
But was I audible?
Yes, you are definitely right.
Okay.
You are.
Yeah.
We are still looking for any questions from any of the participants. Please feel free to put your question in the chat.
Dr.
Meanwhile,
has just raised his hand.
Yeah. So Sharoon, would you like to please speak?
Yeah, I would just like to quickly add one thing, that in your personal statement or in your application, please know this. If you are doing any community service project, you are the part of societies or your curricular activities, they're extremely important. In my interview, I've written in my application that, I've been the part of some group where we sing along, and they asked me to sing in the interview as well. So one thing is, if you're part of the certain project, your activities, they play a vital role into your application. And moreover, and in my interview, they put a lot of emphasis on my curricular activities. Moreover, if you put something, they're going to question about it for sure. Second thing is regarding searching for the universities. You can always look for a website called educationusa.gov. From this can help you to figure out that which university you should apply to. Do not pick up all the top tier universities. Always have a choice of first tier and second tier universities to apply to. But Fulbright folks, they actually help quite a bit on selecting that which university you should go to. They can advise, they can suggest universities by themselves only, keeping in view. And also one more important thing, the dropout rate from the American universities in the PhD programs is pretty high. So you really get ready for hard work when you go there. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So Anam Shahzad has asked this question: how much time should be devoted to GRE? So my first response was that really depends on your academic background. So if you are, for example, a mathematics person or a science person, my general understanding is that probably you would be able to manage the quantitative part easily as compared to humanities or literature background participant. Examinees. So for myself, for example, I'll take a lot of time just for mathematics portion, but I would really like anybody else to respond to this question. The question is, how much time should we devote to GRE preparation? Sharoon or Firasat?
I think, Ms. Anam, it's different for each person. Some people are confident about their quantitative skills and the preparation of maths. And then there are some of us who are more confident about the verbal part of the exam. The GRE exam also has an essay writing component, which is graded on a scale of 6. I think I can't really tell you how much time. It varies from person to person. But I think ideally, you should give yourself at least 4 to 6 months ideally. And here is one more thing, that the graduate school, while admission, will consider your scores that are relevant to your field. So for example, I did PhD in communications, and they would give more in my case, they gave more consideration to my verbal score as compared to quantitative score. But of course, the requirement changes according to different fields, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I also mentioned the minimum score which Fulbright requires. And my assumption is that probably they are going to be a little rigid about that. Okay, because I know some applicants contacted USCFP regarding the score, and they said they want this minimum requirement met. Okay, so it really depends if you, in your own situation, if you think that your score is a little low and you would like to ask USCFP about that. But my assumption is that probably they would want that requirement met.
Another wonderful thing that Hanook just said, that don't be terribly disappointed and terrified by GRE. I think even if you are a low scorer, you should still apply. And my last thing that I think I must share, we at FC, we are lucky that we have Prometric Center here. You can sign up with USCFP advisors for free. And you can set up an appointment and go and meet them and talk to them and ask them about the resources for GRE and resources for mock test, like what kind of book I should be using, GRE flashcards or whatever information. So we have Prometric Center within the premises of FC College, and I think we should take advantage. We should make maximum of this opportunity, and we should take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's right. Just I think we also received this information through CLT as well, when USCFP office in FC College facilitates and provides some facilitators for GRE preparation, some kinds of workshops, as well as facilitation for completing the Fulbright application. So I assume there are some kind of there is some kind of help available from USCFP on campus.
Dr. Waqar, CLT does not provide resources for the GRE preparation.
No, the information that comes from USCFP is forwarded to the faculty.
Gigi, that is for sure.
Yeah, I know CLT does not, but USCFP sends out information regarding the workshops which USCFP conducts. It is for anybody, but the information is shared to the faculty.
And it is also shared through the buzz as well.
Okay, sure.
Yes.
Great.
Thank
you. So are there any further questions from the participants? So I assume if there is no question, we probably can close the session. Some of us might have classes. It is up to Anish. Would you like us to close the session now?
Sure. If there is no other question, then we can definitely close the session. And in case any of you have questions, you can definitely reach out to Dr. Waqar, Dr. Firasat, or Dr. Sharoon, or even to CLT, and we can forward the questions to them. Thank you so much. And thank you to Ms. Nazish as well for her special contribution. Thank you.
Sure.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, and good luck with your application.
Thank you. Thanks to the participants as well.